Board of Education voting meeting. We do have modification to the agenda, and we also have a very, very short exec session. We're going to try to do those two items really, really quickly and then get back here because we have folks from my favorite elementary school, Enfield, and my favorite high school, Mr. Trumbull, what can I say? So we're going to get to discussions in just a bit, but if we could just modify the agenda and add some more personnel items, that would be great.
I move modification to the agenda as presented to us.
Seconded. Thank you, Sean. Second by Sean. All in favor? I guess we'll just do that raise the hand thing. That's everybody. And that modification is for your information and obviously added to the other personnel items we're voting on tonight. And Dr. Brown, I think you requested a quick exec session for the reason to?
I move that we go into executive session for the reasons of discussing the employment history of particular personnel.
Second.
Again, we'll do it by all in favor. We are moving into exec session for the prescribed and appropriate reason, and we're going to orchestra room. Thank you. We'll be right back, everybody.
And I
believe that.
We can get an exec session. It might be a record, but records are made to be broken these days. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll start with consent agenda. That does include personnel reports, basically, and that's the most of it. But thank you. Thanks, Maura.
Second.
Second by Chris. Any questions on the consent? Down the line, we're all good. Right, Nicole, we're good? Yep, okay. All in favor, and we'll do the shout out. That's everyone. So Dr. Brown, school district business, and I think we're going to get a update on this fall. It's still summer, but kids are coming to school.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you. For those who don't know me in the community, I'm Lily Talcott. Hi, board members. Lovely to see you all. So we've got some fabulous guests here with me. We've got the incomparable Jackie Richardson, Associate Principal at Ithaca High School, and Keith Harrington, Principal of Enfield Elementary School, here this evening. And they're going to talk a little bit more about some of the specifics around our fall 2021 back to school. All right, Tricia, if you wouldn't mind going to the next one. Just to remind people and place us where we are, Mary Grover gave us this great phrase, cultivating connections. So in the ICSD, we are cultivating connections by welcoming staff and students back in person for the 2021-2022 school year. I'm going to transition to that next one. If you're looking for any information, last time I provided a little bit of an overview and directed people to the FAQs. We update those all the time, even over the weekends. So feel free to revisit those often, and if you need to see anything in print. But I just wanted to reiterate, this year, it's paramount that folks stay home when they're sick. We are going to be wearing masks indoors always, except when eating, right? We are going to be wearing masks outdoors unless we can stay 6 feet apart from one another. So you might see that in an outdoor classroom, right? We're gonna have 3 feet of distance inside and 6 feet of distance when masks are off for eating, drinking, etc. Mask breaks, lots of hand washing, tons of hand washing, right guys? Yep. Updated or continued improved ventilation and filtration. Those MERV 13 filters have all been changed. Testing for unvaccinated individuals as per the New York State Department of Health. And Tricia, I'm gonna go to the next one if you wouldn't mind, and I can give you an update. So on Thursday, the New York State Department of Health issued 2 key pieces. One is a regulation that all school personnel in New York State must submit weekly COVID tests or opt out through showing proof of vaccination. So we're in the midst of rolling that out. And that schools must offer weekly testing for unvaccinated students. Good news. We've been planning that for many months, right? And we're far ahead, many of the folks in our region, because we did it for 6 months last year as well, right? Additionally, one of the key elements in here is diagnostic testing must be offered. So if anybody becomes symptomatic at school, again, good thing we've been planning this, that we need to be able to offer testing either through referral or in-house. And same with anyone who is considered a close contact. We're gonna go the referral route for that so they're not coming in, right? So those are some of the key takeaways, both the regulatory, or the regulation that came out, right? And then the guidance. Again, nothing was new, but we wanted to make sure that folks, or this part was new, right? Everything else was stuff that we were certainly planning on, all right? So that's a little bit about health and safety, and Keith and Jackie are going to continue to talk a little bit about health and safety, but Tricia, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. I think it's really important that we remember to talk about the importance of learning and joy for our kids, right? We know we have to be really tight with our health and safety protocols, and we want to make sure that learning continues to be collaborative, right? That kids have opportunities to engage in understanding more of who they are and who they are in relationship to others, right? We want them to not only develop skills, but we also want them to develop in terms of their intellect, right? To understand the world and think critically, right? And we want them to do that together with joy. So I'm going to pass it to Keith, who's going to talk a little bit about both some of the health and safety logistics, but also like where they're headed at Enfield. Sure.
All right, so quick question. Last year, if I'm not mistaken, we were providing, or we were shuttling folks to free testing, right? Because the community was full of sites that would do basically free testing. This year, because we're giving folks that option, right? Show us you're vaccinated or get a weekly test. For adults, are we helping them with that? Are we providing any support with the testing like last year, or is it everyone for themselves now?
We're happy to support people in getting vaccinated, right? Vaccination is free. And we're happy to show folks how to make those appointments, right? How to access them. It's totally free of cost, right? And so we're happy to support folks in terms of that. The law really doesn't state that we have to pay for the testing, right? And our understanding is that the governor and the legislature really is wanting folks to be vaccinated, right? And then this is one of the ways forward in terms of that.
Cool. Thanks. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm really honored to be here. It's been a while. So it's been really exciting at Infield Elementary School and many of the elementary schools as we've moved forward through the summer. One of the pieces at Infield that has been really helpful is we've had playground nights all summer long. So every Monday night we come together and there's food and usually some kind of a game or activity, and then the kids play on the playground, and it's given us a chance to stay connected to the community all summer long. And I think in a lot of ways that's really informed how we've approached communication and health and safety at the school. So we have been playing around. Most of us have the triangle desks in the classrooms now, and the new regulations of 3 feet with mask that we had towards the end of last year made a huge difference towards what we were able to do with the classrooms. Last year, due to the numbers and the 6-foot regulations, we were really pretty locked into a grid-shaped pattern in the class, and it made a lot of things difficult and made feeling like a community hard. We were able to get some classes into circles, but this year, got an example up in the upper right there. The triangle tables, you can put them together several different ways that allow kids to face each other, to interact, and yet still be safe at 3 feet apart. And then we've gone through just some general expectations about, continuing the hallway practices of one direction in the hallway, and entrances and egresses to keep kids safe. We're actually really excited, and this kind of connects to we're been calling ourselves the Equitable and Edible Farm School. And one of the things that's changed this year is we're going to be able to go back to the cafeteria for lunch. We're going to continue to do breakfast in the classroom because it's a really important part of morning meeting. It's an important part of the community of most of the classes. But we'll be able to go back to the cafeteria for lunch, and we have figured out a way to bring the cafeteria staff out into the cafe, so it looks a lot more like a food court. And we're working with some partners like the Food Bank of the Southern Tier and Healthy School Food Program to plan to do some tastings. And so the kids will be able to come in, they'll find their seats at their assigned tables, and then they'll be able to come up and get their food and return. And it's really exciting. Historically, we've had to line up in the hallway and then come through the kitchen and get things and then come out. And Erin, who works in the kitchen, is just, I think last year was hard for her because a big part of who she is and why she's there is to feed our kids and to interact with our kids. And so we're really excited about that. And then we transitioned, it's the first 3 days of conference time have been fantastic. So I'm really, truly grateful to have that time back to back to back. And what it's allowed us to do is we've started each day with identity work and reflective work. Part of that school being the equitable part of the school means that we have a responsibility to be reflective and do our own identity work if we're going to expect to facilitate that in the kids. And so we've done that in the mornings, and then really helped each other. There's been a lot of camaraderie in the hallways and in the classrooms as people go in and see how different classes are set up and talk about how they're going to approach the transitions and things like that. So that's a picture of one of the classes. It's too small to see down there, but in the lower right, Ms. Colombo is our school psychologist, and she's set up a little outdoor space. Like, I chose that because We have many classrooms outside, whether they're on the stumps or some of the classes, the kids have little 5-gallon buckets that they can transport all of their materials in, and then they flip them upside down and they can sit on them in outdoor spaces. But we're last year and over the summer especially have really started to think creatively, and Ms. Colombo has an outdoor space, and then we're also, there's some case study work that went on over the summer, and one of the case studies for the 4th and 5th grade classes is going to be a legacy project to create a garden space that is focused on social emotional support. And yeah, I can't say too much more about it because it's the framework's there, but we need the kids to kind of help us guide it. And we did quite a bit of planning over the summer, and the 3rd grade actually has a case study as well, and they're going to create an equity garden. And again, there's some things that have to come out of the case study itself, driven by the kids, but it looks like at the heart of it is going to be this idea of that in a garden, every plant needs something a little bit different, and we have to make space for all those plants, and how we take care of them is going to feed back into their conversations in the classroom around identity as well, and power and privilege. So those kind of things, that's at 3rd grade. So that's been really exciting. I think that's, yeah, I mean, those are those connections, and that's what I've got for now.
Hello and good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to share out some of the work that our high school has put forward in the first days, and our team of staff, students, our teachers, and community and caregivers have all worked towards. So I'd like to just share some of the work. First, I'd like to just share with you how in Ithaca High School in the past years, we've had lunches where there have been 400 or plus students in a space in our cafeteria. And we're going to spread our lunches out and utilize the spaces, the various spaces within our school building and buildings. Some of those spaces will be, of course, the cafeteria, the library, the multi-purpose room, the Culp Auditorium foyer area, the glass area, as well as the Welcome Center. In addition to that, we'll be utilizing 12 designated lunch classroom spaces. And we recognize that this is, it is an undertaking, and in many ways, it won't be an easy task. But we want to place our staff in a position where they feel that they can really get to know their students and our students by possibly eating lunch together. So there will be supervision of staff supervising those areas, and those are voluntary, and we are looking as well into compensating our teachers for those who volunteer to supervise those student areas during lunch. Identity work is something that we recognize as an entire school community, and that we need to continue work. Many of our staff and teachers have already begun identity work and looking at their curriculum and instruction. And in our first few days where we've had staff together, we've talked about identity and the importance of self-awareness as an entry point into having conversations about identity with our students and creating space for our students to share their identities. Jason Trumbull, our building principal, began our day one by sharing with the staff A Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Ngozi, who did a TED Talk. She is a young Nigerian author and speaker. In The Danger of a Single Story, the premise is that when we only perceive others by what we can see or what we think we know about them, we often miss the complexities and nuances, the layers and depth of individuals. And as staff, as adults, we want to create a space where our students feel seen and heard. In order to do that work, it's ever so important that we model that work for our staff and for our students. And so Jason shared his single story and then also dove deeper to explain and share his background, which silenced the room. In sharing our stories, the stories that each of us bring, the layers, we share our vulnerability and we give permission for others to do the same, and however they feel safe to do so. So having those initial conversations, the intention is to have our staff begin to take the risk and have the conversations first amongst in their PLCs, the professional learning communities, with each other, to begin to see the importance of identity work within the classroom and with students. To that, another layer that we have launched this year, and we're very confident in, is our IHS Connects. This is an opportunity every Wednesday, 8th period, for our staff to meet with students and begin some of the very intentional identity work, and more importantly, to build connection. That's in addition to our lunch periods, where students are connecting with each other and our staff is connecting with students. And also, as I said, Wednesday, 8th period, having that opportunity where it's built into the schedule for students and staff to have some of the conversations, and also to celebrate the things that we're doing. Celebrate, insert the joy, ensure that students are being seen, the things that they are doing and the things that our staff are doing that are positive and that ground this work. Just to give you an overview of our passing periods. Passing periods will work much like they did last year, in that in order to cut down the volume of movement during passing times, we will stagger the release of students by grade level, so that only 9th graders for a certain amount of time, there's only 5 minutes of passing, will pass, and then 10th graders, and using spoken communication over a PA system to release students from their classes. That will decrease the amount of volume of students within the hallway and hopefully get all the students where they need to be. We again recognize that that will be a challenge, and we also have done the work to really ensure that it goes as smoothly as possible. We do recognize that seniors will have less time if we go in order of grade, and we're looking forward to the practicing of this in the upcoming weeks. I think that is mostly what I would like to share at this time that our staff has worked on. Thank you again for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much, Keith. We'd love to take questions from the board about either anything Keith shared, Jackie shared, I shared as well. Great, Nicole.
Thank you, Keith and Jackie. For Jackie and also Jason, if you would be able to speak to, Jason, you've been CC'd on emails about the transitioning back to 8 periods instead of the 4 block. If you'd be able to speak to the difficulty of being able to stick with the 4 period, or transitioning at least to 4 period in the spring.
Sure. So essentially the question is moving from a 4-period day to an 8-period day. Yes. Yeah, we struggled. We could not get the instructional time in that we needed to transition out of the 4-period day that we've had in the past. In other words, last year we had PE once a week We had no science labs and couldn't get that to roll over into an everyday schedule, an either-or schedule. Our day is shorter than most schools around, and couldn't get the instructional time in. So we lost those two opportunities and couldn't do it that way. Staff also felt that it was important that they were working with students every day on math, world language, things that needed recitation every day. Were an important avenue to that as well. We have a task force this year to really dig deeper into the possibility ultimately of going to longer blocks, optimally maybe more like an hour, but we've got to work through what that'll look like in the condensed time that we have. So those are some of the challenges that we faced. Yeah, we've got one more year under variance to stay under some of the time, but that's essentially it.
Are there any supports in place for students that realistically are going to struggle in terms of having the stamina to get through such a long day? Just thinking about my daughter who's going to 8th period and spent half of the week at home, being able to go from 2 days a week this summer of just relaxing and then going straight back into 5 days a week, as well as engaging with so many people. Are there supports going to be in place for students who are going to naturally have a hard time with keeping up with that kind of workload?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work here in the opening days to really evaluate how much time we do have at the classroom to maximize. What we were finding in an 80-minute block was that folks were really trailing off in that time, in the concentrated time. And if a student missed 1 day of school, in essence, they missed 2 days of school in the smaller or in the larger block. So we struggled there. The idea being that if we're meeting every day now, that we can keep kids engaged in a way that, again, they're really practicing where we want to be. We're doing a lot of work kind of cross-curricularly to try to maximize opportunities for culminating projects, to try to start reaching across curricular lines. Yeah, we're really trying to focus on making sure that students have all the supports they need in and outside of the classroom. We're reimagining our academic intervention supports in terms of location. We used to have 4 AIS labs spread throughout the 12 buildings. We've now brought that all down to 1 learning lab in the front of the school to try to maximize the time that we have with students and create an avenue for kids to feel safe and get support in more than one subject area. So we're not waiting to see when children struggle and then jump in. We're able to do that in real time now.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question about surveillance, well, just testing. So you're testing unvaccinated students weekly, you're doing diagnostic testing and testing of close contacts, but since so many children and teens present asymptomatically, do you have any thoughts or plans of doing any kind of surveillance testing like, I hate to say it, like they're doing at Cornell, which has deep pockets and limitless resources in their own labs?
So we are mandated to do screening testing. So that's part of what the guidance and the regulation revealed to us, which is great. Again, we've had 6 months of experience with this. Now the number of students will likely increase, right? So we typically did about 10 to 20% or tested 10 to 20% of students each week who were in person. And so we sent that form out today asking for parental consent to engage in both types of testing. So it used to be called surveillance testing, but now the CDC really terms it screening testing, right? And then there's the diagnostic testing as well. And so we have been working with the Tompkins County Health Department, Cayuga Health Systems, and Tompkins Seneca Tioga BOCES since the spring. Big shout out to Carrie Burke and Dr. Melissa Dindali, who have really spearheaded this, I would say, in part for the county. in order to get some systems set up for us to be in a position to be finalizing details at this time.
Thank you.
So just to follow, are we, and for clarity's sake, are we testing 10% of the student population on a weekly basis? Or was that a number I heard, or what?
That's what we used to do. Now we're required to offer weekly testing to all unvaccinated students.
Okay. Right, offer, but not mandated. Is that
Correct. We're mandated to offer, Rob.
right? Language, Lily, it's always language, just
So we
trying.
will only be testing students who want to be tested.
We can, by state law, only test students under the age of 18 for whom we have parental consent to test.
Thanks for the clarity. It's,
Approximately what percentage gave consent last year?
It really varied by school. So we had some schools where it was about 30% of those who were in person that we received consent back for, and some where it was 80%.
Thank you.
So do we have, do we already have the consent forms in for this school year?
They went out today.
Okay, so if we get back, say 100 in the high school, and we are now mandated to offer, that also means if we have 100, we are mandated to test that 100 every week. Is that what that means?
We're mandated to offer it to those 100, yep.
Okay,
There are times, I'll just say, so there are times when kids are nervous about it, or they're not having a good day, and we never want to force a kid to test. We just don't. So we try to be as kid-centered as possible.
yeah, I understand that. I guess my question is, if you have 100 parents consenting, and we're required to offer that, and we're supposed to be doing weekly testing, are you going to go to those 100 kids every week and say, do you want to be tested this week?
Yep, we'll offer it to them each week, yep.
Okay, and I have one more question, which is around the mask mandate, because New York State is also saying any contractors on our campuses and our schools need to be masked as well. And so I want to make sure we have something set in place with facilities or whoever is going to be in charge of that to make sure, because I know as a contractor, when I'm working, I do not like my mask on, but there are places I have to have it on. And I just want to make sure we have things set in place to make sure our kids are staying safe from outside people coming in doing the work in our buildings.
Hi, everyone. Amanda Verba, Chief Operations Officer. I'm overseeing the capital project. And yes, we are doing that. We actually just had a meeting this morning with Carrie Burke and with Cindy Doucette from Campus Construction. Essentially, that those rules do apply, even anyone that enters our building, it applies to them. And so we're going to be, we anticipate that there might be some minor pushback, but contractually, right, to keep kids safe, that's the public health law that we follow. And so contractors will be doing that. We will not be holding a record in the school of their cards, but the contractor, the GC will collect that from the subs, and then that information will then go up to our campus construction project managers.
Okay, and when you say cards, you mean vaccinated cards?
Vaccination proof, because you have to either, if you have vaccination proof, right, then you don't have to go through the testing. If not, then you have to go through the testing. They're going to be managing that with their staff.
Okay, great.
Just for staff, Kelly, is what Amanda's talking about.
Yes,
Yeah.
right, because obviously it would be students.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
go ahead, Maureen.
One question I have has to do with testing. So what kind of testing are we doing with students and staff?
So it's molecular testing, which is PCR testing, or polymerase chain reaction testing. So it's the gold standard of testing. Last year we did the antigen testing. There are
Right.
two types of weights to collect that Cayuga Health Systems is prepared to have us engage with here. So the first is anterior nares, and that is the front of the nostril swipe, where you do 10 seconds each on each nostril. And the other is saliva-based collection.
So, and these are both PCR tests.
Correct.
Yeah. So we won't be doing the, like.
Nasal
you know,
pharyngeal?
Yeah, the
No.
brain tickle.
No, the one that goes way beyond your nasal passage and is super uncomfortable, we are not doing that.
Now, will we be offering people either or?
Again, we're finalizing all of those details, but what we do know is that it can be challenging if you've ever, back when the mall site was doing the saliva-based testing, if you've ever tried to bring a small child there to collect that much saliva, it's really challenging.
Or
So we're-
even for an adult? I found
Sure.
it very challenging.
Yes, exactly.
Get that much into the vial.
So it's just important to note that for transporting them, saliva-based tests, samples are much more stable. So they don't need to be temperature controlled, whereas anterior nares samples do have to be.
So in terms of gathering the vaccination verification, the vaccination records from staff, how is that being done? I gather it must have started, though, even though it's not, I gather there's a deadline whereby staff have to produce that.
Yeah, after our board meeting, actually, we were planning on communicating out with all of our staff. And it's a really, really simple form, and folks can upload different types of documentation, including just like a picture of your card from your phone.
So what is the turnaround on the PCR test? So I know I'm getting questions about last year, we had people sitting in the nurse's office and it was 15 minutes, we had the results. So what is kind of the process now and the turnaround time for the PCR testing?
The Cayuga Health Systems folks have been clear that they're pretty set with the 24-hour turnaround. So they are currently, or they're about to start the process of moving their lab so that they actually have greater capacity. So they're likely going to be able to start with us the week of the 20th, right, in order to ensure really rapid turnaround for folks. And all of those are going to be available through the Cayuga Health Systems portal. And if anything's positive, then it's both a call from the health department and it would be a call from us as well.
I have two questions. I'll do them one at a time this time, though.
Thank you, Erin. So helpful.
Sorry. The first one, in regards to testing, but also I'm looking on Less Talk to not have to make you answer questions you already answered. But it said that if you don't have any symptoms, you do not need to quarantine. Is that, so if a member of your household has COVID-related symptoms, is that accurate still?
Are you pulling up the return to work or return to school protocol?
Protocol for students returning to school.
Yes. All right. So there's two different things to remember. So if you're unvaccinated or if you're vaccinated, there are two different protocols, right? Mm-hmm. So as long as you remain asymptomatic, right? And that person, if you're vaccinated, right? And that person is not awaiting test results, right? If they're already cleared and you still don't have symptoms, then you can come back, right? But if that person is getting tested, either way, you have to wait, right? We're putting that out again to folks because it can totally be confusing sometimes. And each week we've crafted these what ifs, right? Questions just like that. So somebody in my house is sick and I'm not vaccinated. What do I do? Right? So we've got those, and we've got visuals for folks who may not speak English, right? So it's really clear, like when you can't come to school or work.
Perfect. And then the next question is about masks. When you talk about enforcing masks, that case in, I think it was California, where the children got sick because someone pulled their mask down.
Marin County.
And you see it all the time where people pull it down to speak or just pull it down to breathe. how are we enforcing that people are actually wearing their mask properly to protect our vulnerable children?
We have lots of practice with that from last year, I'll be honest. So it's, it's everything from our new mask signs that have been laminated and sent, hundreds of them out to each of the schools so that they can go on all around the buildings and all around the doors. So there's visual signage, right? There's a ton of nonverbal cues. So any educator in here now knows this, right? Like we go like this all the time with our kiddos and with our staff. And folks, that's like the international sign for put your mask up over your nose, right? Because sometimes it frankly slips down. Sometimes we know that folks need better fitting masks, right? And so we go and get them better fitting masks. We have a couple of different sizes that we have, and we're constantly, especially at elementary, I would say, we're constantly changing out masks when they become soiled, especially after recess. I've covered a lot of recesses. Kids have come in and they just know automatically to change them, and they know if they need to tie the tops in order to make them fit better too, and adults help them with that. And I think, it's really about the culture we all share responsibility in building, right? When my daughter and I, she's 2.5, right? We go out and she's like, Mama, I have to wear a mask. And I go, right, why do we wear a mask? Oh, to keep others safe, to keep us safe, right? And so we've noticed too that kids will talk to kids, kids will talk to adults, adults will talk to kids, right? We all share in that. And there have been times where we've had to go to further, we try to be as restorative as possible. And there are some times where we've had to, really pull out our code of conduct and engage further with kiddos and other folks in order to make sure that they're doing the right thing to keep everybody safe with masks.
And then, sorry, one more that just came up. I'm thinking of kids with like sensory issues. Do we have like the straps available so it gets off their ears if they have a hard time and that sort of adaptive stuff?
Yeah, so we have, for those who aren't familiar, there's a piece of plastic that actually the folks from Incadema donated thousands of them to us that make it a lot more comfortable for young people. So it kind of rests under their cranium just a little bit as opposed to being behind their ears. So we've got those. We do have some students with mask exemptions. There are very, very few of those folks, but we do have those. Yeah, we try to work with kids to get them the most comfortable ones that they can.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, for whether folks need to isolate or return to work rules, the health department still, whatever they dictate to that individual is what we have to follow outside of what's listed on our website and direct instructions, correct?
Precisely, yeah, there's no test out of quarantine that we can provide or isolation, that's right. And the health department is the only entity that can mandate quarantine or isolation.
Other questions? Go ahead, Ed.
Looking at the website, the Reopen ICSD thing has a lot of great information. In particular, my question is about the mental health page. If I'm not reading it incorrectly, a lot of the information there points to external stuff, like for caregivers and for maybe kiddos and staff. I didn't see anything about what's happening in schools. Did I miss it, or is that just not something we feel the need to promote because it's been going on?
I think that's a good question. Mary Grover probably would love to talk about that specifically, since this definitely falls in her wheelhouse. Mary, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing in relationship to mental health in-house? Yeah, I would say it's likely simply, we update our pages all the time, and some of them get more attention than others at different times.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we do want to communicate with families and caregivers, and starting last spring and this summer, a group of school psychologists and social workers are collaborating on compiling resources for families of what's offered in our school buildings as well. So in the next 2 weeks, that will launch. There's a draft right now. They've requested a little bit more time to complete that as they're welcoming students back and getting feedback from families.
Other stuff? Keith, kids, when do kids come back tomorrow? Or first, young kids? Kids come back Thursday. Thursday, that's what I thought. All right. So, excellent, excellent. And you mentioned staff, Keith. The kids are going to be ready to go, raring to go Thursday, Friday. How's the staff?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. The last 2 days have just been a lot of energy in the school. Folks are excited to come back. We've got some new faces in the building and around the district. And then, we have folks that were teaching virtually last year, and so they've been coming in and just getting to know each other. Like I said earlier too, I think, at least in my experience, there's been a lot of people walking up and down the halls and seeing different approaches to setting up the classroom. That's really exciting. The elementary level, we'd love to set up our classroom and have it all perfect. There's a lot of time spent there and thinking about, how the kids are going to come in on that first day, but a lot of really positive energy. And then, I know that there's been a lot of work all across the district, especially around like the case study work. The anti-racist and anti-marginalization work has really inspired people to work collaboratively and reach out to the community. And in a lot of ways, I think like we were doing it last year, but it was kind of building it as we went. And a lot of that opportunity over the summer through things that were offered, professional development and planning time through the district or other ways, all across the district. A lot of folks have gotten to write and plan new case study work. And so I think I'm feeling a lot of that as well right now, just folks really excited about rolling that out and trying that.
Excellent, thanks, Keith.
Yeah.
Anything else? Mr. Trumbull, anything else you want to share before we move on to other stuff?
Yeah, a real shot in the arm was last Thursday. We had a rolling open house. Actually, I shouldn't say rolling open, welcome back to school night. We had seniors come in at 4. Many of our seniors stuck around to then give tours to our juniors, who came in an hour later. Then our sophomores came in an hour after that with their families, and families came in as 9th graders that evening as well. We had 40 seniors show the kids around and families around the school, and that was tremendously powerful, and we've been riding that wave ever since. So that'd be a neat thing to share.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Keith. Certainly feel free to hang around. We're going to talk about HR stuff basically for the rest of the evening, I think. But Keith, as long as you have who you need, we're good. And Mr. Trumbull, I'm sure the curriculum is intact and it's robust and it'll be Ithaca High, right? So there you go. Look forward to it. So there was a HR update. Is that what you wanted to share now, Bob? And thank you, Keith. Thank you. Thank you, Ithaca High. Bye, folks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna start with good news. Well, actually, let me start with some thank yous. I want to thank Karen Barden, who's been an unsung hero of HR for a long time. And she's really worked tremendously hard since the pandemic, and we wouldn't be in a good position that we're in, I think, right now without her hard work. So thank you, Karen. And some good news. Last time I was here, the numbers looked difficult, and we were optimistic. As of 6 o'clock, just before I came over here today, we have currently one opening in special ed that's not currently filled, and we're working on that. It's not all pretty. You know, you'll see on board reports that some of that work is being divided up into 0.167s, which you're familiar with from, you know, even pre-pandemic times. And then the other thing that's happening more than normal, although it did happen before COVID hit, we're covering some teacher spots with teacher aides and teaching assistants. And in their contract, they get a little bit of extra pay for that, but it's not optimal because some of them don't have teacher certification. So it's really a short-term fix, but we are doing that in some cases. It isn't a lot. I think it's under 10 district-wide. And again, it's really a short-term fix as we continue to search. The other area I think that we mentioned last time that was showing some difficulty was custodial. We are still down 8 vacancies. I think we're hoping now that there's been a drawback of unemployment benefits that more people, more labor will become available in the market. So we're hoping with that. We're covering 2 of those 8 positions with rovers, and then the rest is covered through overtime. That's voluntary, but so far folks have been willing to do that.
Bob, has there been any kind of, I'm sure your response is going to be it's negotiations, but with COVID, have we increased the pay for custodians?
Increased pay for, I'm sorry.
Have we increased the pay for custodians given COVID?
We have not. You're correct. It is a negotiation item. We're currently in active negotiations with the Employees Association, which covers custodial and bus drivers and clerical. And we're talking about how to be very competitive with folks locally. And I think, you know, when we have those discussions in negotiations, we are reaching a point where we're like, we are competitive when you consider our benefits and not only the wages. So there's that type of discussion going on.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Would you be able to speak to if we have shortages with nurses?
We do have shortages with nurses. The contract that the board entered into, I think, at the last meeting to contract those services out will be very helpful. I know Carrie Burke, I thought is actively seeking nurses, but as you know, there's a national shortage of nurses, and that has also hit school districts as well. But we'll continue to search. The contract will help that you've entered into. And we're in negotiations with EA, which covers nurses too. So that's on the topic.
But through the contract, as we discussed last time, there will be coverage at each building as needed.
Yeah.
As needed, meaning basically every day, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Bob, how are we currently doing with school bus drivers?
Drivers is another area where we hope that the current changes in unemployment will help other folks enter the market. A couple things have hampered school bus driver hirings even before COVID. The state made the test to get your CDL for bus drivers much more robust than it had been in the past. And so folks who traditionally would have passed have had trouble getting through that. Also, we are in a competitive marketplace for CDL, and unfortunately, some folks come to us to get the training and then very quickly leave for doing private company CDL work. So we're struggling there a little bit. We'll have everything covered. It's not going to be pretty necessarily. I mean, we'll have the mechanics driving. We'll have office staff who have their CDL also driving. So that's something we can do for a few months, but it really puts a strain on the department if it's done, through most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
The transportation department has done a really good job at collapsing routes that, only had a certain number of kids on. We're trying to make the routes fuller, but also remember that kids shouldn't be on the bus for, more than 60 minutes is really pushing it.
Other questions for Bob? Or go ahead.
I'm a little bit confused about custodians. Did you say we currently have 8 vacancies?
Yeah.
Okay. 2 weeks ago, when we had this conversation, and I looked at the listings on the website, there was 1 opening. Right now, there are 2. So where does the 8 come from? And why is there this discrepancy?
I can't answer the discrepancy on the website, but there currently are 8.
And we'll have there is an HR Human Resources work session scheduled for right after this meeting, and probably have an opportunity to talk more, I would think, right?
Thank you.
But anything else right now for this special voting meeting, which we've done our voting? Anything else tonight? We do have a meeting next week, our regular Board of Education meeting, which will have our regular agenda, and it will be that full public meeting, and just so folks can prepare for that.
Question, when the governor's orders say that virtual is now, so how are we handling?
Virtual is an option.
Virtual is an option. Or we're not going to offer that as an option? We're not going to offer hybrid again for our meetings? When that's now part of an order, there's no reason not to?
We have not discussed it yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I saw an email that we were going to discuss that tonight.
Right, we can, we're done with that, so now we have other discussion items, I guess we'll.
Well, that is my question.
Feel free to weigh in.
I think it's important that we offer meetings hybrid again. I think Delta is very serious. We have unvaccinated children at home that we are putting at risk by being here. We have people who want to come to meetings to speak and aren't able to because of the risk. We just heard from a community member whose family got sick because they had to have someone watch their children while they came here to speak at a meeting. I think it is our diligence to offer hybrid meetings. It's imperative.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Aaron. I was actually on that email as well, and it was not a good situation for that family. They're in actually a bad situation with that, having to come here and speak. And honestly, I think we're heading in a direction, not even just with COVID. I mean, I think meetings need to be virtual anyways, so that our entire community can be part of what's going on and hear what's going on, instead of waiting until they get an email telling them what the updates are.
I'm a little bit confused. I remember reading, so this is the opportunity to go back to hybrid, to virtual, came from the governor, correct? The new governor.
Correct.
And that was not until after our last meeting or meeting 2 weeks ago. It was a little unclear what I read about public participation, whether public participation could be either or. I believe what I read, it sounded like it could only be virtual, not in person, which some groups that are concerned about transparency are opposed to. And then, I mean, obviously, any of this stuff, there's going to be some group of people who are opposed to whatever the proposal is. So I'm just really a little bit confused about what we are able to do under the governor's directive in terms of public participation. And I think it's very clear that we could have board members, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that we could have board members participate either in person or virtually. And if that's the case, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that. We did it all, for how long did we do that? First, we did all virtual for months and months, and then we did hybrid. So, given the rise in cases, particularly of the Delta variant, I don't see any reason why we would not take that opportunity to enable people to participate without having to take the risk.
I think I'm trying to find the language to say this. I think we have to separate the want and desire for public participation to how the board is going to conduct the work of the board. Board meetings are typically scheduled for the board to complete its work, and there are multiple ways to communicate to the board, either wants, wishes, complaints, successes, etc. And talking to legal counsel and talking to other school boards about what they've been doing, particularly given some of the events that have been happening across the country, and talking to the New York State School Board Association, a reminder that a school board is not required to have public participation on its agenda. Not saying that I would recommend that, but it's not a requirement. So for me, there's two questions. One, should the board do its work in a hybrid or virtual realm? And then second, how do we address public participation, or what I would want to continue to call communication with various community members, caregivers, etc. So I think we would be wise to separate those and have two different conversations. One, do we want to conduct our work in a hybrid and virtual model? Then the next thing that we would have to address is, what does it mean and how we would engage in communication with community members who can contact board members in a variety of ways, including having public comment on an agenda?
And I'll just say, I think, to clarify, I think what I was saying is that I believe we should conduct our board business in a hybrid fashion under these particular circumstances of a resurgence of COVID, particularly the Delta virus. And the policy committee just spent quite a bit of time talking about the second question that Sean raised. And we have two policies on the books that address how the community engages with the board. We had a very good discussion. We're considering the possibility of combining these two policies. They definitely need some work. They were revised a while ago when we started having first completely virtual meetings and then hybrid meetings. Things changed in terms of the way that we engage with the public and the way we did our business. So the policies definitely need some revision, and some of it should definitely be done with consultation with our attorney and also looking at what NYSBA is currently recommending. So we have some work to do in policy about the second part, about public participation.
And just to be clear, the new governor did not declare a state of emergency and single-handedly say, okay, you can have, I'm changing the open meetings law. There was a special session of the legislative bodies, and it's now the law of New York State, that you can have completely virtual, completely remote, hybrid, or in person. And so I think it's pretty obvious that, for me, I would say that completely virtual is not something that I would agree to, because we have staff and students in person every day. So the board, I believe, should be in person to some extent. But we can have a quorum with those in person and those who are joining in on hybrid fashion. However, that, just going back to what we did before. And the law certainly changes the existing open meetings law that you had to open up your home to anyone else that wanted to come in while you're participating. That is no longer the case. So again, we go back to that hybrid model, and that's basically a law of New York State now. So it's just up to us how we wish to ask that our meetings be shared and how we wish to work together. And I think that's like staff, we pretty much we've had experience in this, so it's not Tricia, it changes how we run our meetings a bit, but we've done this before. I think we need probably Tricia and Casey or someone else to help run the meetings. It really does take more to run the meeting, right, Tricia? So just want to make sure that Tricia has what she needs when we go hybrid.
And this will most likely change, but the change to open meeting law is until January 15 of 2022. So I would imagine that would be extended, but right now we're talking about what are we doing between now and January 15 of 2022.
Was it that limited?
That's what I read, and
Okay,
someone can
yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
It was frankly a hastily put together law, but they did pass it. So I guess that is right, Sean. I guess I saw that. So there's no reason not to take advantage of it while we go through the fall. But that's just my opinion. Others can weigh in.
We have I personally want to do what feels safe and comfortable and equitable for everyone here. Everyone's situation is different. So even though I may feel safe being here, that doesn't mean that other people do. So I want to make sure that we're providing equal access to everyone who's committing to do this work on the board. I know that we also have the technological devices like OWL to do so. Having been in Tricia's position in terms of navigating Zoom and doing so many things at once is very difficult. So I think that Tricia, not talking about Tricia, but whoever is running the Zoom needs to have support to be able to do those things, because when things fall between the cracks, the community members tend to assume that things are happening intentionally when we just don't necessarily have the woman, man, non-woman, man power to be able to do those things. In terms of Sean, Steph Everly brought, well, second question, I personally appreciate the engagement from community members at our committee meetings, whether that's HR or curriculum. The feedback isn't always great, but I think it's always amazing to hear from parents and people like Roberta in terms of the ways in which we should be moving forward. People are of different ages and have different comfort levels. So I think that we have to find a way in which to make that accessible until January. In terms of public comment period, I think I'm relying on policy to be able to come up with a way in which it doesn't become a scenario where we're being yelled at for 3 hours. That doesn't feel good to me. I personally don't like it, I'm speaking for myself. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Other thoughts?
I'll throw my support behind hybrid. I also would be uncomfortable with going fully remote with teachers and children in the building. I know there's several board members who have young children in their homes, that fully in-person meetings are a real and pressing concern, and other people may have health issues of which I am unaware because it's none of my business. But I think there is, as others have said, there is no reason not to take advantage of the hybrid format. Who knows what's coming down the line? Hybrid always gives us the opportunity, those of us who feel that we can, to be here in person, and it gives full participation to board members who feel that they need to be at home.
And for policy, we had public comment through the hybrid model already. So I think, but that needs to be what's it called, Sean, when you write things for real and put it in a policy?
That's a great question. Kind of adopted.
Codified?
Thank you, Moira. It takes an English teacher to help me with my language skills, but yeah. So, but it should be, because we will likely be in these circumstances from time to time as we move forward with a variety of whatever may happen. But the business of the district does not get accomplished if we can't come together as a group and have a quorum and do the district's business. Sean, that's what you're saying. That's what the purpose of these meetings are. And so if we can ensure that board members can participate from wherever they can participate and be able to get the work of the district done, then why not? And I'm not sure, and I would, Tricia, I would think that we could be set up for a hybrid meeting next week. And we stopped wearing masks for a while, Tricia. Now we wear masks again, and we had totally open in-person meetings for maybe a day and a half, I think, and then we're back with hybrid. But I think we can do that, right, Tricia? And I don't think I think consensus. I don't think it's not motion needs to be made. John, this is just us and how we do our business, and so I would look forward to on Tuesday, a week from today, which is the 14th, there would be a hybrid meeting. In the meantime, certainly public comment will be on the agenda, and welcome folks here. Will be in public, right, in person. And yeah, I don't have any little kids at home. Jethro is pretty immune to COVID so far. So I think, so that's right. I don't have those risks, so I'm happy to be in person. So that's not an issue. Sean, how far do we go with public comment for the next meeting?
We keep it as is. It's just, I want us to be aware of all that we're trying to consider. And without question, there's no doubt that we need to continue to be engaged with community, friends, folks that we know, and also want to make that time as productive as possible. So it may not always be polite, but it is productive, and so we'll continue that. To Nicole's point about committees, that part we're going to have to work out in terms of public participation. We'll have to work that out. I don't know what that looks like, but we'll follow up with that as well.
Right, Sean, it was work sessions. I guess by extension, they will be hybrid as well. Is that what Moira?
That's what I'm hearing. And is there any barrier to us reverting to having committees that are hybrid for the board members? Anybody?
The governor has cleared the way for
Right.
a hybrid
And in terms
model.
of our logistics, we can revert to that without too much trouble. Then we get to revert to transcripts rather than minutes. But then at least I can read what people said when I can't actually hear them when I'm here in person, which I'm having a lot of trouble actually hearing what people are saying.
Right, because the lack of ability to talk through a mask, and it's a version of what was said, not perhaps what was exactly said.
Right.
But so help me out. My brain is a little fried, but did we have hybrid work sessions? Or were they all virtual work sessions and we did hybrid?
They were almost all completely virtual that I recall.
They were mostly.
So our board meetings were hybrid, and
But the work sessions
our
were
work
not,
sessions were
correct?
virtual.
Right. Initially, our board meetings were all virtual.
Oh, right.
Then we went to hybrid, but I believe, and there were a couple of occasions I recall with like the curriculum committee, like particularly because it was a curriculum that was meeting before a board meeting.
Yes.
And so there was at least once or twice where I was here and other committee members were at home. So it was a little bit complicated.
Yeah, along those lines, I would like to suggest that if we have a committee meeting, work session immediately preceding a board meeting, that we build in like at least 15 minutes of lag time so that those of us who are participating virtually and then want to come down here in person don't have to miss half the meeting to do it.
So I do want to be clear on work sessions. Will they be totally virtual? Or are we going to do a hybrid work session?
I am not against totally virtual work sessions.
I think that would be useful for Tricia as
Yes.
well.
Yeah,
Tricia's giving a thumbs up, so
yes.
Look, and I'm sure as board members, we've all received feedback of the accessibility for community members to participate in our work sessions when they're virtual. Nicole has mentioned one person in particular who's written to me multiple times saying, can we go back to virtual work sessions so they could attend? And I've had a number of folks make that happen. So at this point in time, if our goal is engagement, then I would also recommend to give Tricia some space that our work sessions are virtual. It does raise the question for curriculum and for legislative advocacy, which are scheduled usually directly before a board meeting. And maybe we'll let those committee members work together and have a conversation and decide what's best for those committees. But for policy and HR and for finance, facilities and finance, then let's have an expectation that those will be virtual. If there's no board objection, if that works for folks.
Until January, and then we revisit, right?
That's right.
So it is possible, and I think I did this at least once, was I was here in person and others were virtual for a curriculum work session, but I needed to go somewhere else.
Sure.
Because of hearing it both live and virtually.
Yep. We can find classroom space. I'm sure someone can find classroom space for us.
I'm not going to sit in a classroom doing something virtually just so I can get an extra 15 minutes of curriculum. I'm just too old.
Noted, Pat.
Sound like just like a student, Pat.
I'm too old for this nonsense.
So basically, team, wanted to get through that if we could. I think we've got a consensus idea of how we're going to work these next few months most efficiently and healthfully. Use that word? Yeah. But so I think that's useful, helpful. So staff team can be clear. Obviously, Tricia and everyone that helps us do what we do, folks in the back. We appreciate all you guys do, you gentlemen do. So we're good for next week. And some of us will be here and some of us will be tuning in remotely. And when we wrap up, anything else right now? Because there is HR work session. You're still going to do that? Yes? Yes?
We will be brief, says the committee chair.
Moira has spoken, and so we're going to wrap this up tonight.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Cool.
And
Thank you.
we'll see folks in the orchestra room, I believe.
Yeah. Thank you.